Hello, everyone. It's me again. I am making my way through this book with some of you. I know some of you are watching the videos lagging behind. I know that some of you are reading the book ahead of time and not paying as much attention to the videos. I've been having conversations with some of you, both at Lizella and Wesley, about this book series. What I am getting is a pretty positive review overall of the book itself, and of course the reflections that have come from the book. So I'm really excited that we are making our way through this. I'm excited that we have a few more weeks left. I'm proud to kind of plunging through this thing as best we can, and I think we're making our way at a pretty good pace. And so I really want to just kind of jump right back in to the interlude here, which is kind of funny because I'd given you guys the reflection previously, but my video got cut off. I realized later I just didn't bother to finish recording it. I felt like I would deal with it later. But in my reflection at the end, the application piece, I actually did the same spiritual practice that Leighton Ford uses in this book about emphasizing the words, "Be still and know that I am God." If you've never done that kind of spiritual exercise before, I want to encourage you to do that. Be still and know that I am God. Write those words down and understand how that verse changes. And not just this verse, you can do it with many other verses through Scripture, where you say, what is the difference between be? Like, reflect on that. Be still. What does it mean to be still? Be still and, right? It leaves some opening. Be still and know. Be still and know that I am God, right? You go on all the way through. This is an exercise that he writes about here in the interlude, and it's really kind of at the center of what I think he really intends to write about when it comes to that interlude and intermission there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to jump right on to known, which is the next hour of the day. And I'm just going to be honest that I thought this was his best chapter so far. I love what he wrote here. It got kind of long towards the end, and so that is kind of what it is. But I really thought this was a well-written chapter that was very cogent from beginning to end and very directed upon a point that is extremely important for us as people as we go through this process of paying attention to the approaching darkness. Yes, on a daily basis. Certainly on a weekly basis, but also over the course of our lives. He starts out with this quote from T.S. Eliot: "Old men ought to be explorers. Here or there does not matter. We must be still and still moving." Kind of this paradox, but it's this idea that you can be still, slow down, but also create movement with your own life as you are paying more attention to what you're doing with your own life. So we're talking about this next hour of known, which is particularly emphasizing the approaching darkness of the day. It's mid-afternoon, end of the afternoon. And it happens, let's just say 2/3 of the way through the day. I had written down some words here, and one of those was talking about when I always hit this moment of sadness when I'm like 2/3 of the way through a trip, especially a trip that I love and I'm enjoying, whether it's vacation or like mission trips that I've gone on with the church, where if you're on, I'm just going to say a 14-day vacation or mission trip, right? Around day 10, you start to realize that the bulk of what you were doing there is behind you. And you still got 4 more days, so you're excited about that. But around day 10, you start getting a bit sad because you realize that things that are coming to an end as you approach kind of resuming normal life and going back to things that may be more difficult than where you were. Which means that this hour of the day is in part about letting go. This is what he writes about. This is a time of letting go. And we go through periods of like this in our lives. Actually, this is kind of an interesting moment of the book where we are finally ahead of where I am in my own life as far as, prime time and all these others have been kind of closer to where I am in my own ministry and career. Whereas known is something that is going to come to me probably in the next 10 or 15 or 20 years as things begin to wind down, as I see the end of things approaching, end of careers. My parents are kind of 60s, by the time I get to be older, right? There'll be some real transitions within the family. And I say that, not to, to be sad about things, but there's just a reality of life changes that happen when you start entering into that end of career, adult children phase of life, where a lot does change for you. And so, this time of darkening is tough, and it's interesting that what he begins to write here almost becomes akin to something that you would hear with like a funeral liturgy. I'm not trying to kind of rush us to the end where things kind of come to a complete close, but you can hear where he's starting to change the tone of saying, the busyness of life is so distracting, to where all of a sudden he's starting to say, pay attention with this idea of gratitude, right? So before it's been just quiet down, be quiet, try and learn to find quiet for yourself. Whereas now it's less about the quiet and more about gratitude. Gratitude because God is right where you are. Entering into the darkness is a scary moment. It's a scary place. But I've never noticed this text here out of Exodus chapter 20, verse 21, where it says, and I looked it up, where it says Moses entered upon, the people were on the distance, and Moses went into the darkness where God was. Jesus is the light of the world, and he lights everything up. But the reality is that God is in the midst of coldness and in the midst of darkness. We tend to think of darkness as being absent of God. That's not at all what is the reality per our scripture. God is in the darkness. God has taken up temporal residence in darkness. And so as we approach this time of darkness ourselves, this season of darkness, for the day, it may mean entering into the end of a day, not yet over yet, where you're laying on your pillow reflecting back. But as you're moving into this period of darkness where you realize that the events of the day are coming to an end, it is what it is. It's time to shift over now to the comfort of night, living into the night, that time of night as we prepare for a new day. We should go forward with the encouragement that God is right there with us. The deep darkness where God is. This is what the note Leighton Ford, this is what was on the note that Leighton Ford was reading as he was grieving over the loss of his son. In fact, on page 146, I really enjoyed, in fact, I'm going to pick up this book by Ronald Rolheiser, I imagine is how you pronounce that, The Holy Longing, where he says these words, "There are many deaths that we die throughout our life," suggests Rolheiser. "The death of our youth, of our spiritual and psychological wholeness, our dreams and our honeymoons, even our ideas of God and the church. As Karl Rahner put it, in this life, all symphonies are unfinished. Yet these many deaths, some small and some huge, may be God's way of bringing transformation and new life. And in Jesus' words, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." He begins to talk about the difference between terminal death, which is like the death of our body, and paschal death, which is a word that references Passover, or Easter, which is to say that, you know what Easter's about, right? Jesus goes into the ground and then he raises up 3 days later. There are paschal deaths. These are like holy deaths that we experience throughout our lives as we let things go and come into new places. The fruit of the seeds of these past deaths comes to life in our lives as we go. There's a real experience of growth that we have based on the previous transformations that we have experienced. I'm trying not to be too deep here, but what I want you to understand is that the stuff of life that we're doing, it moves us forward, it progresses us forward, and in our faith, we are matured, and our experience of God is deepened. The further we go into this thing, the closer we get to it, at a microscopic level, to the presence of God, the more we find there and the more that is opened up for us as we go. It gets sweeter and sweeter. Recasting the Paschal mystery into terms that are personal for each of us, Rolheiser puts it like this. Let's look to the top of page 148. Name your deaths, claim your births. Grieve what you have lost and adjust to the new reality. Do not cling to the old, let it ascend and give you its blessing. Accept the spirit of the life that you are, in fact, living. Y'all, this is so beautiful to me, and I really just want to move towards a close with this, even though I know that he wrote a good bit more. I'm going to reflect on one more thing, but I want to move towards a close in reminding you to live according to this cycle, or to work that in one time. I say live according, I'm not, it's not something you do every week, but take inventory right now. What are the deaths that you have experienced? And this is not just relating to deaths of people that you've loved who have been close to you. I know that's going to be a kind of a gut-wrenching thing to do, a heart-wrenching thing to do, to relive some of those experiences. The goal here is not to make you sad. The goal here is to pay attention to the ways in which your life has transformed as you have journeyed through various transformations, and to celebrate, accept the spirit of the life that you are in fact living in right now. He does this thing that I've actually never really seen, and I don't. It doesn't sound like he was prompted to do this. It just sounds like something he did. But on page 153, I really am going to conclude with this, that he writes about the dimensions of love: how long, how wide, how high, and how deep. And the first thing he does is he takes a sheet of paper, and in fact, I will most likely, if I can remember, I've made it a note. I will likely do this in a Bible study in the future. He does the chronology of his life. He divides his life up into 8 sections based on the length of the length of each section, kind of relating to various life experiences he's had. I imagine like pre-marriage, post-marriage, before children, with children, jobs. These probably will all mark big moments in his life. Second thing is how wide. I then superimpose on the chart a series of map-like drawings showing the unfolding of the wheres of my life's journey, spreading from boyhood in Canada to a worldwide ministry, and now folding back to a more limited circle near home. He puts map markers, around this timeline of his own life that he's drawn on the page, right? So markers denoting where his life impact is touching people's lives. And then the last thing is how high and how deep, and he kind of redoes this chronological timeline, but instead he draws highs and lows as to where he was feeling at the time within his own relationship to God. How high, meaning how close to God, and then how low. You have these moments sometimes when you're sad or sorrowful. But in charting out his life this way, he's able to look back on the ways in which God has shown his way through all of it, through all the places he's been, through all the people he's known, through all the relationships he's had. He's come to recognize that the darkness that's to come is not something to be so much feared as much as another reason to lean into the faith that he developed in God. You guys, I hope you enjoyed this reflection in this chapter as much as I did. Like I said, I think that this is really an invaluable chapter, and in fact, it's one that I would offer to people even outside of the rest of the book. It's just, like I said, a very, very good way of talking about this time of the day, this time of our lives. I'm curious what your reflections are. I know that people haven't been using the chat feature so much down below, but you're more than welcome to. And I would love to kind of get back, in touch with you that way. But thanks a lot for following along. Thanks for reading along with me. Next week, chapter 8, let's jump into it. We have a few weeks to go. I will catch you next time on the flip side. See you guys.